We're bringing tender plants under cover today on Pots and Trowels, and that's brought to you with the support of Cobra Garden and King Seeds. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. Well, today I'm going to be taking some of the container plants with tender or borderline hardy plants into the greenhouse just to give them a little bit of winter protection. So I'm going to show you how we do that. But before that, just a reminder, as well as our weekly videos on YouTube, we also do a weekly podcast, also called Pots and Trowels, where we talk to somebody from the world of garden. We have a few recipes from Jill, we answer listeners' questions and a few jobs for the week. And that goes out every week and is available from your normal provider. So please give that a listen if you like listening to podcasts. But back to our tender plants I need to get in. So this is the last one that needs to go in. This is a, believe it or not, and you wouldn't think so looking at it, this is a pot of Agapanthus that is now dying down. And this has flowered so well this year. It's done absolutely amazing, but it will benefit from just a little bit of overwinter protection. So what I'm going to do is get my little trolley here, take it into the greenhouse, and I'm going to show you what to do with it to keep it nice and healthy over winter. There you go, that's everything in. And in order to be able to bring the tender plants in under cover of the greenhouse, then I've had to clear out all the old tomatoes, the cucumbers and peppers that were growing in the beds just here. So they've finished, we've had a good crops off them, I got the last few tomatoes and peppers off, cleared them out. But what I have done is keep the old compost that was in the pots they were growing in. So I've got these 3 large tubs of spent compost. It's had a season, but it's too good to throw away, that is. So what I'm going to do, I'm leaving it in here just to dry off a little bit. Come the spring, I'll riddle it to get rid of the last of the roots. I won't use this again for growing tomatoes or peppers, but what I'll do is refresh it with mixing some new compost into it. I'll put a bit of extra fertilizer, maybe a bit of grit, and then we can use that for containers next summer. So don't waste it, recycle it. And if you don't want to do that, just use it as a mulch around the garden at this time of the year. Some of the other things that I brought in to overwinter, I brought my little citrus in here. So this is a calamondin, has little small oranges, only maybe about so big. We've got flowers and we're already starting to get quite a bit of fruit developing on these. These have been out all through the summer. This is remarkably hardy. This has stood several degrees of frost in the greenhouse. And then there's an orange and a lime that I will just give a little bit of protection to with fleece. And then my aeoniums, I've got a little selection of aeoniums. These have been out all through the summer in a lovely sunny position. And what these need, again, is a little bit of frost protection over the winter months. So I'm letting them almost dry out. And what I will do with these, in a few weeks' time when it gets even colder, we've got a little porch at the back door that is just frost free. So they'll go into there just for that little bit of extra protection. And then we've got these bigger shrubs. Now these have to survive in the greenhouse. This is a lovely shrubby salvia. This one is called Salvia convertiflora. It's got these lovely little velvet red little flowers. These always flower at this time of the year. And if we don't get particularly cold weather, these will keep flowering for several more weeks. There's lots of shoots with flower buds in them. So that one will stay in the cold greenhouse, as will this one with these big leaves. This is an African plant called Sparmannia africana. And this has quite interesting white spiky flowers through the winter months that grow from the tips of the shoots. Now, what I do with these is keep them in here. When they do die down, naturally, I cut them down, but I've got lots of fleece. So these get wrapped in fleece through the winter to keep them ticking over. And again, in here, they do survive and they've been fine for the last few years. But what we want to look at, which I've just brought in, are the Agapanthus. Agapanthus are so popular. So just a few tips for overwintering them. Basically what you need to know is there are 2 types of Agapanthus. We've got the deciduous Agapanthus, which is like a herbaceous perennial that will die down in the winter months to the root and then grow back again in the spring. And then we've got the evergreen types that have usually a broader, thicker leaf, and these don't lose their leaves over winter, they stay there. Out of the 2, The deciduous ones will be the hardiest. They will stand about -10, -15. So if you've got them planted in the garden, they're absolutely fine. You could put a bit of a mulch over them to protect the crown, but they are hardy. The reason I bought these in is because they're in a pot and they're a little bit more prone to frost damage. The evergreen forms aren't as hardy. These are hardy down to probably -5, some a little bit tougher than that. So these are ideal for bringing into this cold greenhouse. And the secret is to keep them on the dry side. They will stand more cold if the compost and the roots are drier than outside, where it can be equally as cold, but they're in wet, soggy compost. So that is the trick. Keep them just a little bit on the dry side. And what I would do with this one here, this is a lovely one. You can just see the last of the leaves. This is a lovely variegated one called Silver Moon. And it's been absolutely amazing. We've had about 40 flower spikes on that this year. A lovely pale blue flower. It's probably the best it's been in this pot. These are the remains of the old flower spikes here. When we cut them down, you couldn't get to the base for the foliage. So what I'm going to do with this, as you can see, it's dying down. So anything that I can pull off immediately, these old leaves, I will just tease those out, just run my fingers, almost comb it through with my fingers and get any that's wet and soggy out. And then just cut down these stalks a little bit lower. So it's a little bit of a tidy up at this stage. And what will happen to this over the next 2-3 weeks, and here we are now, it's middle of November. We have had it very mild in the UK for the last month or so. We've only had not really any hard frost, just the odd ground frost. So that's why these are a little bit later coming in this year. So once I've trimmed it down, what I'll do with these is not water them anymore. The compost is quite moist and I will almost let these dry out over the winter months. And as the foliage continues to die down over the next 2 or 3 weeks, gradually it will all be taken away until we're just left with an empty pot. And what I might do, just to protect the buds just below compost level from, if it does get below freezing in here, I might just grab a handful or two of that old compost and just put that on the top to act as like a little duvet, just to give them that little bit of extra protection. And that is that with these. I shall leave them alone, and then come the spring we'll see the first signs of new growth, and then we'll start and water and feed and they'll burst into growth again. With the evergreen ones, very little to do. Again, any leaves that have gone yellow like these, it's always good garden hygiene just to pick them off, because they're only going to rot away. But don't cut the rest off, because as I say, these are evergreen. So I'm going to work my way, just tidy them up. All of these leaves will be taken off. Now, you might notice that these are very, very pot bound in these pots. They've been in these tall pots now for a number of years, to the point where it's actually started to push itself out. Although Agapanthus like the roots to be restricted, they can get too pot bound. And a telltale sign of that is when they suddenly stop flowering. So over the last couple of years, we've got fewer and fewer flowers on these 2 pots of the evergreen. So that tells me they are completely root bound. So I will let them tick over through the winter months, maybe fleece them if it gets, you know, -4 or -5 in the greenhouse. But then come spring, we're going to take them out of these pots and divide them, because they're just going to get from bad to worse in this condition. So we can divide them with a sharp blade in the spring. But for now, don't do that. Leave them as they are, let them overwinter, and then we'll come back, revisit them March time next year to see how they've got through the winter. Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels, and remember, all the videos we've done you can find on YouTube. We'll be back again next week outside in the garden planting tulip bulbs, so we'll see you then. Bye.